Welcome, everyone. This panel is the Madame of Mayhem. We are a group of, I think we are 23 writers now. And what we're going to do is to tell you a little bit about our history. I don't want to bore everybody to death. And so Donna and I are the co-founders of the Mesdames of Mayhem. And so we're going to just tell you a little bit about how we got together. And then we're going to open up the panel to talk about really how the Mesdames of Mayhem has sort of affected not just our writing and our promotion, but our lives really as individuals. And so I'm going to go back to 2013, and it doesn't seem like a very long time ago, but probably in terms of social media, it's like a generation almost. And we were two writing groups, and we were worried about social media and trying to understand this beast and how we were going to deal with it. And we decided to pool our resources and put our two writing groups together because Donna is a whiz at WordPress and knew all about websites. And I had taken like one course in Twitter and Facebook. And so that's how we got started. And then, of course, I have a degree in science, and I also have a degree in business. So I started to think, what could we do to make our group more cohesive? And one thing we thought about doing is to have an anthology. So that thought it would be a really good idea to have an anthology, because that way we could reach out to readers. Our groups were interesting because they're very disparate. And we have a range of writing that goes from comedy. Melody Campbell, who you might have seen earlier this morning on a panel with Jane Bernard, and Randy writes comedy, and she's our queen of comedy. And then you have people like Kathy Astolfo and me, really, who write very dark, so write noir, and you have everybody in between. So this way we thought, if we put together a book, then our readers can have a buffet, and they can sample each of our writings, and if they like our stories, they can go back and read more of our work. So we were 13 writers contributed to this anthology, and therefore we get the very creative name 13. And that's how we got started. Donna, would
Well, you know what Madeline will tell you is that the Mesdames of Mayhem were her brainchild. And she's the one who came up with the idea, and it was a brilliant idea. And back in 2012, we'd done an anthology under Carrick Publishing, but we didn't think of it initially for the Mesdames. It was later, I think it was probably early 2013 when Madeline came up with the idea of doing an anthology once we'd formed the collective. It was just a great idea. And we've morphed and grown and flourished, I guess are the words, so much. As you said, Madeline, how many are we now?
Well, we have grown a lot over the years. So we are now 23 members. I would call us a collective, really. We also have 3 messieurs. So originally we were all women, and we were promoting crime writing by Canadian women crime writers, which we still do. But we did let in 3 men because they were nice guys and also believe in promoting women crime writers.
Yeah.
Specifically Canadian women crime writers.
Ed Pivowarchuk, I think, was our first, wasn't he, Rosemary?
That's right, yeah.
And Ed was also our editor to begin with, too. And he's such a wonderful writer in his own right. Really good, sort of more hard-boiled mystery, I think I would class it as. Would that be fair?
Very, you can tell he's a male writer.
Yes, you can. You can. Yes.
Yeah, you can. We are a span of ages, which is also really cool. Our very oldest member is probably in her late 80s, and that would be Mary Patterson. And we now go down to probably a person in her 30s, and that would be Kat Mills, who is our youngest member. And also we ended up making her an honorary member of the Mesdames because of this absolutely wonderful documentary that she made about us. We're going to talk about sort of how this happened, but sort of how one thing leads to another. But let's talk about what the Mesdames of Mayhem has really done to help our writing and so on.
One other thing I think is should address is that we're now not. At first we were Southwestern Ontario, and now we are across the country.
You're absolutely right, Rosemary. Excellent, thank you.
We have Calgary members. We have Fort McMurray.
Murray members.
And what else? Ottawa
members.
Yeah.
Brantford. So yeah, we are now a national organization. So I'm going to ask Madonna really to start off and talk about how the Mesdames of Mayhem has helped you. And
oh well, but actually, I just want to ask when you mentioned, like when you first asked me to join, and because I'd heard about you and I was saying, wow, this looks like a great group of people, and I wish I could figure out how to be with them. And then we're at BoucherCon, I think, in Toronto, and you come up to me and say, you know, I'd like to invite you to join. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so honored. So I think, I mean, the support that I get from everybody, that's one thing for sure. And I guess, well, there's the opportunities, like it's not just like the anthologies. So you have somewhere where you can actually showcase your talent. And it's just, I think it's, well, I guess like the best thing is just you have the support system, because like writing is such a solitary, well, it's a solitary job. I mean, you can't exactly sit around and, you know, well, actually sometimes you do. You can sit around and write with other people, but most of the time you're just sitting by yourself writing. And so this way, when you hear, if you're having some issues, then just contact with other Mesdames, and, you know, you find out that everybody else is having the same kind of issue. And so, I mean, it's the biggest thing I think is the support and helping to get your name out. So.
And Rosemary?
Okay, yeah, I've been part of the group pretty well from the beginning. From Madeline and I are in the same writing group, and she told me about her idea, and I thought it was terrific. And there's a big cultural difference, I think, in the past 25 years with writers. Before that, things were very secretive. You didn't talk about, you know, you had a manuscript, oh, it's going out to a publisher, but you didn't talk about it. You know, anything, you thought the whole thing was that you didn't share because you're a bit of information somebody else could use that. But the culture has changed so much, probably a lot to do with social media. And now writers, and you hear there are groups like this in other countries as well. I've heard a little bit about that. I think Madeline has met a few at conferences, and they realize the value of sharing. I teach a course, an novel writing course at George Brown, and I mean, that's all about sharing. You know, I'm always giving my tips to the students to help them get published. Madeline goes around to libraries and gives a talk on how to get published. But with this group, you know, if a novel's coming out, I have a novel coming out in the fall, and I'm sure everybody, once I get the cover and unveil it, I'm sure everybody will share it on Facebook. And, you know, with social media, we can do that a lot more. Before 25 years ago, we didn't have that. So how did you really share? But it was like, you know, you have to pick up the telephone, and but that's how you share. But now we have social media, and so there is a lot of sharing going around. I remember a long time ago when I was first starting out, and I won not I won, but I was a finalist in a contest in 2007, and a well-known writer emailed me. This was called the Unhanged Arthur, Crime Writers of Canada has, and it's something like the J.D. Dagger, Canada's version of it. And so the shortlist came out, and the well-known writer emailed me and says, "Anything I can do for you?" And I said, "Well, maybe you could introduce me to your publisher." Well, this was a no. Like, she gave me 20 reasons why she couldn't possibly do that, and was every time I met her after that, very cool to me. So that was a big, maybe that was a big faux pas on my part. But maybe that's the one thing you don't share. But I asked, and I think today that would be a lot, a lot more. A person like that would be a lot more agreeable to doing so, because it only comes back. You realize that what you give comes back to you, and if you don't, you don't share, that could come back to you another time.
You and I were talking about this the other day, Rosemary, about how at one time everything was kept so cloistered.
Yeah.
And you either sank or swam, and that was it. That's not the way of the world now. Yeah. Now we have such a robust diversity, as Madeline was touching on earlier. And I was thinking this, Madona, when you were speaking about how you felt honored to be part of the Mesdames, but the Mesdames is honored to have you, because you bring something, again, completely unique to the group. You've got that little crossover paranormal thing going, and it's quite interesting, and you delve into it so seamlessly.
Yeah, I guess I started writing science fiction. That was my first love, and I still do now. And I mean, I've got some science fiction short stories, mostly mystery. And I mean, my first things I've published, the novels, because I always wanted to be a novelist. The first novel was actually a mystery novel. And so, yeah, I mean, I just try to do a variety. Like, I guess also, I'll just plug my book a bit. The main character, like, she used to run marathons in her spare time, but then she was disabled by a severe attack of MS. And then she became sort of like your little amateur sleuth. So she goes off to find her friend. And I have a sequel that just came out. And in that one, she's tracking a serial killer. So
tell us the titles.
Oh, sorry. Journey of 1,000 Steps is the first one. Sorry. Not that good at tooting my own horn.
It's the interview. I'll make you. Journey of 1,000 Steps.
And the first one. And then the second one just got released. That's Death by Association.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to make enough money to hire a secretary to advertise for me. So.
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, one of the good things, and I have to plug my very good friend Marion Misters a little here. She runs a wonderful bookstore here in Toronto called The Sleuth of Baker Street. And once COVID stops having a stranglehold on the world anymore, I really urge you to visit if you ever do come to Toronto. They are the most marvelous mystery store, and all crime fiction. And Marion has we always have our book launches at Sleuth of Baker Street.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful because we can fill the store for Marion. So it really is like it's give and give, like as we're saying, it's more like, and what we talked about already, like this cultural change, I think there is greater strength through sharing knowledge and sharing and supporting each other for a book launch. What's really great is that Rosemary and I have belonged to the same writing group. Must be almost 20 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, maybe more.
And but in the past, when we had that, we could bring, of course, our entire writing group would come. I realized, okay, if I launch my book, my writing group's going to be there. I'm not going to be alone. But it's even better now that we have 23 people, because we know we have 23 people, and the 23 people have friends, and they're going to absolutely fill the store. And not only will they buy our book, they'll also have a huge selection of wonderful mysteries and crime fiction at Sleuth of Baker Street that they can have a lot to read for the next few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Sleuth of Baker Street, you can Google it, and please do. And as Madeline says, once this COVID situation,
It's open now, though.
is it open now?
Yeah, I've been
They
up there.
are open. They are open for curb pickup, and I think 3
No,
people on the store.
no, Madeline. They've gone beyond curb pickup. They're open.
Oh,
Space.
all right.
I was there a month ago and bought a couple of books. Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, one of the things that we do believe in as the Mesdames of Mayhem is knowledge transfer, and several of us are teach creative writing, and several of us also mentor other writers. Donna, you mentored Elle Wild, who went on to win the Arthur Ellis Award for Best First Novel.
Yeah, that's unpublished. Yeah, yeah, and maybe Best First Novel. I'm not sure.
I think she won Best First Novel.
Did she? Wow.
I think so.
I knew that she had been nominated for Best Unpublished. But yeah, I think you're right, because, yeah, I remember that. Because she couldn't attend, and she asked me, how could I forget this? I actually accepted the award on her behalf.
Okay.
It was a starring moment for me. Oh, dear. Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, and Rosemary, you teach creative writing.
I do. Yeah.
And one of the things we do is we work really closely with libraries, because I believe that a librarian is really a writer's best friend, because a librarian can, I'm sure everybody knows about the public lending right, where if your book is in the library, the government actually pays you for it, which is kind of nice. And also the librarian can recommend your book. And one of the things we do in Toronto quite regularly, or pre-COVID we used to do, is to actually give talks at libraries. And Rosemary, you've given teaching, you've taught creative writing through the library system as well.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of seminars that 1 hour, 3 hour seminars that I've whittled down. So that's a way that we, and also, but doing it together is, we can all go out solo and go to a library and say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I thought I was cut off. Okay, we can all go out solo and say, like I'd like to give a talk, or I'd like to talk about my new book or my books. But it's actually, unless you're as famous as perhaps Louise Penny or some of the other big ones, Sarah Paretsky, and that they basically probably wouldn't want to do a whole evening of me. But when we come up with a theme of the Mesdames of Mayhem, and we're going to talk about how we got started, or we're going to talk about what the short story is, or what the crime fiction genre is, whatever. And there are 4 of us. The librarians are far more probably willing to have us in there, if we're not kind of star names. We have 4 of us talking about a theme that a lot of people are interested in: crime writing. How do I become a crime writer? And why are we that sort of? So the numbers are calling card for us. That the Mesdames. So we'll put Madeline or whoever gets the. I know this. I was hoping it would go up to Collingwood, and I'd met this lovely lady on a trip who knew Collingwood well, and she contacted the librarian there, who was thrilled to have some Mesdames. She wanted 3, and I put a call out. We were supposed to go up there in April. Of course, the pandemic happened, but they were all excited. They thought it was such a great turnout. They were going to put us in the theater next door and to the library, and everybody was excited. So that's the sort of thing. We have our ears open all the time to where we can go. We've kind of exhausted Toronto libraries.
Well, the best thing I
By
think.
the time this is over, they may want us back. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best things about the library is that it leads to other things. And I think that is perhaps for me been the greatest thing about the Madame, is that it's been an adventure. Like, it's been an adventure since the beginning. You never knew what it was going to be. I mean, Donna and I were just reminiscing the other day. I mean, it's been 7 years since we founded. I mean, if somebody had told us at the time that we'd have 4 anthologies and somebody would have made a movie about us, I would have thought they were.
And Madeline, you're overlooking. We've had the 4 anthologies, but we also have had some Carrick Publishing anthologies too.
We do.
Now, how many we've had? I think we're on our 3rd. So this is going to make 7 anthologies that most of us have been in. You know, and Madonna,
right.
You're in the upcoming.
Right, and of course we do have an upcoming anthology, which is which Donna actually thought of before COVID, but turned out to be serendipity, and it's called A Grave Diagnosis.
Yes. And the theme of it is illness and malaise, murder, malice and malaise, I guess. You know, murder and illness. All kinds of evil, all kinds of evil. And Madeline and I had lunch late last year, and Madeline said, is Carrick Publishing going to be doing an anthology in 2020? And I said, we just finished the Mesdames one. Let me breathe for a second and think about this. And then I said, yeah, all right. And I had a couple of themes in mind, and one of them was illness. And Madeline thought that was a pretty good idea. You know, we could all have stories that had something to do with illness. Well, COVID hit, and don't I come off looking like some kind of opportunistic monster? But what the heck, you know? I mean, here we are. We have this book now, and it's coming out in October, and it's a really fabulous book. And Rosemary, thank you. That's all I can say. Just thank you. Rosemary has done just a mountain of work on it already, and that I really appreciate that.
Right, you're our copy editor.
Yeah, Rosemary did the copy editor for us this time around. Yeah, our usual copy editor, Ed Pivowarchuk, who is brilliant, he was busy with other projects this year, so Rosemary very gallantly stepped up, and man, I'm so glad.
Well, one of the things that we've done in terms of helping other writers, especially emerging writers, is for our anthologies. We had, I guess, starting with our 3rd anthology, 13 Claws, which is this one, which is all based on murder stories involving animals. No animal is murdered in the book, by the way. It's is that we decided to have a contest, and I was just totally blown away by the quality of stories that we received. And it was very hard to make a decision, but we ended up, 3 people basically tied and ended up in the anthology, and also very happily decided to join the Mesdames of Mayhem as well. And so we continued that with our latest anthology, which is in the key of 13. And that's how we got our 3rd Monsieur, Larry Keach.
Mm-hmm.
We let him in because he wrote a good story.
Good story.
But yeah, like, to go back to what we were saying, like, what I think the Mesdames helped us is to be really flexible with the changing publishing environment. And when we first started out, I felt very confused about what was happening with social media. How would we deal with this? And it really helped to pool all our skills, our brains together to figure out how we were going to deal with this. And we've been able to kind of grow with the business environment as it did. And one of these things is and looking upon this as an adventure, is that when an opportunity comes up, you kind of follow it without really knowing what's going to happen. And that was really how this movie about us got made. And one of our biggest supporters has been the Beaches Library in Toronto. And I gave my usual talk, which is how to get published. And at the end of this young woman came up and said that she was a filmmaker and would be interested. She thought, these women of a certain age. That we weren't dead and our brains were still alive, I guess. Sort of. Anyway, they would be in the film, and I thought, sure, yeah. And Lisa, you know more about this, so unmute yourself, Lisa. But Lisa and Kat got in touch, and Lisa said, no, you got to really come and talk to Kat. And so I did, and I thought, well, what's an hour? We'll talk. And sort of 3 hours later, I realized that this was such a wonderful opportunity. And so we made this film. It took several months. And she, and her approach was quite interesting. She ended up focusing on 4 people. And I think, Jane, if you're still here, unmute yourself. But it's very interesting. So Donna and Lisa and Jane were some of the people that we really focused on your stories, which is to tie into why we write crime fiction.
And Melody Campbell too. I don't know if Melody's with us right now, but
no, Mel, I don't think Mel is with us. No, I don't think she's on Zoom. So,
and if you do go, it's a 15-minute video. It's called Meet the Mesdames, and find it on YouTube, because that really helps Kat and Felicity if you go to YouTube and give it a view. It's only 15 minutes long, and what it will tell you is that diversity lives in the writing world. It really does. Like, Lisa, your approach is so very different from mine, which is so very different from Jane's, and very different from Melody's, and so it goes on. And that's true with Madeline and Rosemary and Madona and all of us. The approaches are so very different, but because of the world and the business model that we're now all swimming in, as Madeline was saying, it's all valid. Guess what? It's all valid, and it's all fun, and I love reading, all of you. Every single one of you, I love reading.
So filmmaking is a very slow process. I discovered that it's you have to do several takes, even though I think when we were presenting in the key of 13, and I was supposed to come in and say, here's the cover. I guess I had to do that about 10 times. If people hear me. But, it's a wonderful opportunity. And I have to actually give Kat a bit of a boost here, because her film was a finalist for, it's that very old film festival that's held in Saskatchewan.
Yorkton.
The Yorkton Film Festival, that's it. Thank you. And so that was really great. And I feel she's made another really wonderful film called The Posthumous Adventure about right. And it's an interesting story, because the guy was a biker, and he died, and his one wish had been that he could motorbike across Canada, but unfortunately he died. So his wife put his ashes in a container and set them off Vancouver Island, but unfortunately she wasn't aware of the currents and the winds and Vancouver Island, and the container kind of bobbed up on this other beach in Vancouver Island. This young couple found it and brought it back to her, and that started a very interesting story about how I don't think the young couple, but a friend of theirs actually took his ashes on a journey across Canada so that he could posthumously experience having a motorbike across Canada. And it was a really interesting story. So I thoroughly recommend that film as well. And I believe that's on YouTube as well.
And CBC Gem is wonderful. But what I understand is if you actually find it on YouTube, then you're going to give countable views. And that's really important to these young filmmakers. And we writers know what it is to need a little bit of help. So any help you can give these young filmmakers, I know they'll appreciate it.
Yeah. So one of the other things that sort of going on in line with, in addition to the film, but what we're also branching out into is audiobooks. And Donna, if you would speak to that.
Well, what I've been doing this year, and it's not actually audiobooks yet, but it will be. What I've been doing is something I call story stalking. So if you look, and not stalking as in stalking, although that's my pun, because I am stalking those stories. But if you look up story stalking as in Pippi Longstocking, you'll find that I've been reading a story every week from In the Key of 13. And my aim is to get the modulation just right and then do the audiobook. I want to have the audiobook done before the end of this year for In the Key of 13. And, then I want to go back and do our back volumes as well. Because audiobooks give people a way to listen when they're working, when they're jogging, when they're driving, all these things. And we've always known this. We've known this for a long time, even back when it used to be 8 tracks and CDs and all these things. We've always known that listening opens up a world for readers. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I wanted to have some fun with it before I delved into the technical work too deeply. So that's what I've been doing. If you look up story stalking on YouTube, you're going to find In the Key of 13. And I believe I just published a story by Marilyn Kay called Her Perfume. And Marilyn writes with a bit of a travelogue edge to her crime, and it's quite beautifully written. So I think you'll enjoy it. She's visiting castles, shall we say? So thank you, Marilyn. I see you there. Thank you.
So I'm just trying to make sure that we have enough time for questions today. And so I'm going to open up the floor. So please just either raise your hand or put your questions on chat. And we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
I have a question. Will the Madonas be doing an anthology next year?
Well, I don't know. Possibly.
We do an anthology every other year from the Mesdames. And then we sort of hopscotch between Carrick and the Mesdames. So that's been our rhythm. So I'll have to talk to Madeline and we'll have to see what the game is. What the game is. Look, I see a thumb going up over there, Jane. You've already got an idea, I'll bet.
Well, we do have an idea. But yeah, I mean, one of the things we do as a collective is, and which we can do so much more easily now, even now that we're a national collective, is to meet on Zoom and have a group meeting as one of the good things that's come out of COVID, and discuss what our new theme is going to be. Because I think in our earlier panel today, we talked about sort of themes for anthologies, and so this is it makes it much more interesting for the reader to have one. So, and which we're thinking of doing for this one. And so, anyways, about for a grave diagnosis, we're one of the things we're going to be doing is to have a Zoom launch. So that could be interesting.
A lot of fun. That could be a lot of fun. So spread the word if you're out there, everybody, please. As soon as we have the dates and everything tied down, we'll try to get them as public as we can. And, you can see I've already inserted the cover on my cover map on the top row.
Excellent. Okay.
I just love it so much, so I had to throw it up there. Yeah.
There's a question. Okay, this is from Sean Bird. In the view of the panel, what are the top 3 elements of a great crime story, and how do you approach them? I'm going to let Madonna start off with that one.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Well, elements of a crime story. I think you really need to start out with a good character, a good protagonist, And I mean, the old days of, you know, the guy in the white hat or whatever are gone. So your protagonists, you have to make sure they're more reflective of what modern society is. And the evil person, again, even the darkest, evilest person, they're creating stuff where they think, they're doing stuff where they think that they're doing a good thing. It's from their point of view. They've been wronged by so-and-so. So they're not just pure evil. They have to have multi-layers. So that's the first thing, you know, that's very important are the characters. Well, what I can do is let another person handle the other elements. So, I mean, like plotting and
That's what
stuff.
I say about plot, because Rosemary is very good at plot.
Yeah.
I've thrown it. Stuck now. There's nowhere to escape.
Well, I'm a big believer in the classic plot. You know, you have to know it. You really have to know it. In my novel writing 2 class, it's the second, they've all had novel writing 1 taught by somebody else or an equivalent at another college. And where the big focus on that is you look at the classic plot structure. And you got to know it, and if you can break it. Not everyone follows it religiously. You might not have you know, all the plot points there, but you've got to have the major ones. So you've got to at least know that. And before you start, or you can start really bogging down. So I really believe in that, and I believe in a strong opening. You know, it's got to grab you. And this we know, and we know this from trying to sell the manuscript. And one of the workshops I give at libraries from time to time is the first page workshop. I no more than about 15 to 20 people in the class, and they all bring their first page. The library photocopies it, so everybody has a copy, and you learn as much from looking at everybody else's as having yours reviewed, and the class critiques it as a whole. But that first page, or you know, so that first page for agents and for publishers, but the first chapter. You know, I know there's some classic stories that, you know, only perked up at page 60 and they became great. I'm sure you all know some of the ones that I mean. But basically, this is not going to really sell or hold the reader's interest. So you've got to have a really strong opening chapter.
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
Madonna talked about character, which is my favorite thing in the world is a good character. And Rosemary talked about plot, and you've got to have a plot that can develop and flow and grab the reader with a good hook right at the opening. And I know that Madeline's going to want to talk about originality because that's who Madeline is. So I'm going to talk about lyricism, because you have to have some love for the language. If you're going to write anything, whether it's mystery or poetry or anything, have some passion for the language, because that's what's really going to compel your reader to come back to you. Whether you change characters or whether you write something in a completely different genre, they'll come back to you if they like your use of the language. And I think you've got to have, somebody mentioned in an earlier panel today, Easter eggs. And I think it's very true. You've got to have Easter eggs for your reader. They've got to know why they're reading you. That's it. And Madeline, what about originality? What do you know?
I think you know, what to dovetail to what you were saying is, I think there has to be like some emotional or human resonance in a story, in a great crime writing story. Like crime fiction, you can use as like guides to really expose a lot of social issues, and I believe a lot of crime writers do that, because you can perhaps, you know, it's in a more palatable way. You can, because it's not really sort of a direct focus of the plot, but as part of the atmosphere. And I think that if you can create this human resonance in a story, that's when that stays with you. It's like, this could happen to me, especially in a thriller. This could happen to me. And I think those are the stories that sort of stay with you. And Sean has another question. He says that, of course, we're talking about the elements apply to all stories, and that's absolutely, but what specifically with crime writing? I think most crime writers want to believe that they're also literary writers.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, we all have that secret hope. We're not just commercial. We're not just.
Well, the one thing when I'm trying to write a mystery, I mean, because like in the second novel, I thought for sure, like Death by Association. See, I'm plugging myself, and it's like I went out of my way to make sure that you didn't guess the ending. And I had one of the neighbors say, "Oh, I thought it was them." And I was just like, I was almost going to burst into tears. And I said, "Well, did you really think so?" "Well, no, I just suspected." It wasn't until they were revealed. And so for me, the crime is very important. You have to pick something that is, because remember I said you start with your character. So your crime has to be something that's sort of appropriate to your characters. So that, I mean, my character is, she works with high-tech computers and things like that. So she wouldn't necessarily be going to a baking show, let's say. And so anything she's going to uncover might be something related to something to do with tech, computers or something like that. And so I think when you're writing a crime story, like you have to make sure that you have like red herrings weaving through, and you've got to hide clues. You don't want to just do this fantastic story and then get to the end and say, "Oh, well, this is the killer right here." And then the reader is saying, "Yeah, but how do you know?" And you just bring it out of anywhere. You know, you can't do that. You have to have it so that the reader is guessing who is like they go along with you with the clues. So that's, I think one of the most important things is to make sure that you plant things properly and you hide them. I mean, for example, there was this one book, which I won't mention the name, but I'll remember it forever. It was a murder, well, nobody got killed, but it was kind of an attempted murder mystery. And the problem is, like, within the first half a page, I knew exactly who the culprit was, and I actually also knew why. And I'm thinking, oh, well, it's a good thing I like this writer, because I've just sort of read the book.
Why, that is a subgenre, Madonna.
What? No, it's just...
You do have to keep them guessing till the end, but there are so many kinds of crime novels. There's not just...
No, it's a very broad category.
Yeah, but in this case, though, it was a mistake on the author's part. It was just, they had the character overreact. And it was just like when I was writing the first book.
That is...
yeah, no, it was just bad. Like when I was writing the first book, I realized I have a habit that, okay, I know who the guilty one is. They got all the scenes, and everybody else, I kept saying, well, why? They couldn't be guilty. So you can't do that. You've got to make sure that you're spreading, you know, like, I mean, yeah, if you're going with the subgenre of, you know, who the killer is at the beginning, that's fine. But
and
like
talk about the why in that case. But
yeah,
is just coming out very soon with the 4th Pat Tierney book called Uncharted Waters. And Rosemary, you take quite a different approach, and you still don't know who done it until you know who done it. But your approach is really much more about the why, because there's the whole financial aspect, and your research in that is quite good. I mean, you really tether all the facets together. What can you say about research that goes into a crime novel?
Well, in my case, I was a journalist for many years, and the latter part of my career, I wrote. I had to take the Canadian Securities course to work at the Financial Post, and I wrote a lot about personal finance and the financial services industry. So I've interviewed all of my stories, all of the financial crimes I've written about, and I've interviewed people about, and I can go back and, you know, if I have any questions when I'm writing the book. So it's research, but it was part of my job. So it's not like I would have had to spend, if I didn't have that background, I would have had to spend a lot of time researching that. So luckily, and I made it, you know, it was when I was looking for a sleuth, I thought of making her a journalist, but I thought, no, I've been there, done that. And then I kind of liked, it was when I started writing about Pat Tierney, the time when there were all the, you know, the slime bags in the industry, the Maddox and all of that. And I thought, you know, what if there was a good one? And, what if there was a financial planner with or an investment?
Untapped element. It really is an untapped element. A good financial planner who helps people and who solves.
But I mean, and I've met them because I've interviewed them for years, and I know, you know, there's a whole lot of people that are out there that are thinking about their clients, and you know, that are not, you know, taking money from them, and they want to see that they have sleepless nights when the markets are rocky because they feel badly about, you know, their clients. Mm-hmm. And so that was one. I'm getting off the topic here. That was why
Pat Tierney is so likable that anybody who hasn't encountered her, go
like her
and look for the books because she really is a good character.
So unfortunately,
other people have done research.
Unfortunately, I, as a techie person, I have to say we only have like a couple of minutes. If there is one quick question, otherwise I have a last question for the panel. There's one quick question coming in? No? Okay. So what I would like each member of the panel to do is, with our 4 anthologies, to tell me which of their stories in here is their personal favorite of the one they've written. I guess I can start off. I guess my personal favorite of all the stories in here is probably the one in our very first book, because I worked as I was a bureaucrat, and anybody who's ever worked for government can say it's really crazy making. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to write about a beleaguered bureaucrat who takes matters into his own hands when he gets a particularly incompetent deputy minister assigned to him. And actually, I use some real incidents that happened to me, so I leave it to the reader to decide which ones are real and which ones are not. And it's called Anders Cat, and it really, it's a comedy. It's a bit of a departure for me, and it's one that I thoroughly enjoyed reading. It was one of those stories that basically wrote itself, and that's anyway. So over to you, Madonna. Which story did you?
Anders Cat is a wonderful story. I would have to say my favorite of my stories is not going to be the same as the favorite of readers, I don't think, because I have a soft spot for the latest one, Solace in D minor, in the key of 13. And the reason I have such a soft spot for it is our middle son has just spent 4 years in the music program at York. So our lives have been all about music for the last umpteen years, between his gigging and his studying and his practicing. And so I just loved imagining what it would be to be part of a musical family and part of that, you know, well-known. The character suffers from Asperger's, high-functioning Asperger's, and her father committed suicide, and he was a well-known rock star and a songwriter. And she is a songwriter, although she's not a star, because for obvious reasons. So she enters into a relationship that her family strongly questions, because they think that she's maybe a little too easy to pull in a certain direction because of her problem with Asperger's, you know. And plus she had been one of the 3 children who found her father dead. So it's affected her whole life. Anyway, without telling any more about that story, I loved delving into that psyche. It's maybe not that far-fetched of a one for me. So so I really enjoyed it. I loved, you know, just imagining what would this character do in this situation. So.
Rosemary?
I guess in the same anthology, in the Key of 13, the anthology with the theme of music, my story that's probably one of my favorites, because it's Farewell to the King, and it's when I was a young reporter at the Montreal Star, I was sent down for the day from Montreal to Memphis to cover Elvis Presley's funeral. Of course, we got nowhere close to it at all, the happening, but it was on a bus full of Elvis fans. They're very popular in French Canada. These gals, they knew every word of his songs. They couldn't speak a word of English, but they were just so happy to be there on this air-conditioned bus. They never got off. And so it was writing more about that. But I started writing, I just heard on the radio that Elvis has been dead 40 years ago. This was about 3 years ago. And I started writing the story. And anyhow, it's total fantasy. There's a drug deal and whatever. None of this happened in reality. But I just kind of thought it was really kind of fun to go back and revisit that day.
I'm afraid we're out of time, everybody. I'm going to have to say goodbye. And thank you very much to the panelists, to Madona, to Rosemary and Donna Carrick. And thank you very much to the audience. You were terrific. And we hope that we can see you in real life next year at When Words Collide.
Yes.
Okay.
And visit the book table.
And don't forget, blatant self-promotion. Have a look at the shared authors table.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.